So hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Level 7 Diploma in Education Management and Leadership. And this is Unit 2, the Management of Educational Change. So welcome to the module, and my name is Mrs. Maria Mazave, Professor of Education. So in this presentation, we'll cover all the following subjects. And throughout the presentation, I've included the learning objectives and the assessment criteria. So the first learning outcome is to be able to identify issues requiring change in education. And the assessment criteria which you'll be assessed on for this is research the need for an educational organization and to apply the models of change management. So I've actually included the models of change management a bit further on in the presentation. Haha, so I can't actually access my notes while I'm looking at this. Okay, so there is a hyperlink on the screen. So if you could have a look at that web page, and can you have a quick read through that blog? And I'd like you to think about the issues which could possibly require change in education. And you could think about an educational institution that you know quite well, maybe one that you work at or one that you've been to yourself, and have a think about the main issues there. I'll give you 3 minutes to do that. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to read through that. So when we're thinking about what could require change in education, we need to think about how we're going to know that. And a very useful tool to use when trying to think about what you need to change is self-assessment. And self-assessment helps to identify strengths and limitations. And that can be for staff and for the organization as a whole. So self-assessment relies on you being honest, admitting what needs to be improved, and setting action plans to achieve it. And that should result in an improvement in practice of the staff and an improvement of the products and services offered. And in teaching especially, we are encouraged to be self-reflective of our teaching. And during that self-reflection, you can be in a constant mood for thinking about what you need to change personally. But that can also be applied to whole organizations. So teachers can self-assess against a set of standards, for example, the education and training's professional standards. And more in, I can't see this on here, so annoying. Okay, I'm just going to stop the share just for 2 seconds. And then I'm just going to talk without the PowerPoint. So you can have a look at a set of standards which teachers can self-assess against, and it's on the Education and Training's professional standards. And you can actually watch a video on that website as well. So I recommend that you have a quick look at that. So it's www.etfoundation.co.uk, and it's under supporting practitioners, professional standards. So we have self-assessment, but we've also got the idea of self-evaluation. And self-evaluation is a process of thinking about how you have performed and asking yourself questions to identify how you could improve. It also includes obtaining feedback from others to inform your questioning. So when you're evaluating your practice, you need to consider how your own behavior has impacted upon others, what you could do to improve, and then put that into practice. So it's really a way of continually thinking about your own practice to ensure you're carrying out your role effectively. So I want you to just take a couple of minutes here, and I want you to ask questions to yourself. I want you to think about what questions could you ask yourself to help you evaluate a session that you have taught. I'll just give you a minute to think about that. Okay, so you might have come up with some ideas there. So a good way of helping you to evaluate a session that you might have taught is to maintain a reflective learning journal. And that's just simply, it's a bit like a diary where you write down things that might have happened during a learning session, a teaching session, and you just reflect upon how you have taught that session. So it might have been your relationship with the learners. It might have been your ability to question. It might have been your ability to manage behavior in that session. And if you reflect back on that continually after each session that you teach, it helps you to evaluate your development and move forward as a teaching practitioner. So I'm just going to direct you back to the PowerPoint now. Okay, and I would like you to have a look at this video. And it's just a quick overview, ideas about how to implement change to curriculum. And it's called the 6 Steps of Curriculum Design. And this website is actually been quite important for the curriculum for Wales. And it's just a platform to help manage curriculum design and delivery, specifically for primary schools. So if you just have a quick look at that right now, have a quick read through, it shouldn't take too long. Okay, so hopefully you found that interesting. Just some ideas there on how to implement change to curriculum specifically. But even after you have implemented change, you still need to continue with your process of reflection and evaluation. So program evaluation. So whichever type of program, qualification, or set of standards that you're teaching, it's really important to evaluate everything that you've been involved with. This is not only to help make improvements to the program, but it's also for yourself, and it's also for current and future learners. Your self-evaluation and other information and data you obtain can help you to formulate a report for your managers, which will link into their quality system. So evaluation, therefore, is a formative, ongoing, or at the end of your program system. If it's formative, any issues can be dealt with immediately. And if it's summative, they can only be put right for the next group of learners. So whichever way you go about it, it's going to be a positive outcome. So how do we go about obtaining information and data? So obtaining feedback to help evaluate your program can include surveys and questionnaires, which you yourself might have filled out as a learner. Surveys and questionnaires to learners and others involved in the teaching, learning, and assessment process. It could come through appraisals, reviews of progress and meetings with your line managers and peers. But obtaining information and data can also come in a qualitative way through discussions, interviews, observations, and data analysis. So obtaining data and gaining feedback regarding learners' progress towards the product and their satisfaction regarding the services received is really a crucial part of the evaluation process. So qualitative and quantitative information and data. So I don't know if you've heard of these different types of data before. Qualitative tends to be more of a discussion type of data collection. Quantitative is more to do with numerical data. So qualitative data gives you information, for example, from answers to open questions. Quantitative data gives you numbers. For example, 8 out of 10 learners achieved the qualification. But you need both of these types of data so that you can evaluate your program fully. So to help you evaluate your program, you could obtain data and statistics regarding your learners. So for example, things like enrollment numbers, retention numbers, achievement, where they've gone after their learning, their destination, and their progression figures. So once you've been through this process of evaluation and reflection, then you can come up with areas for improvement. So based on all that information and data that you've gathered and you've received, you then need to be able to analyze it. And you then need to write a report with a suitable action plan with target dates. So a really good way of organizing your targets is into actions, which can be put into the acronym SMART. I don't know if you've heard of that before, SMART. And these and SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So your organization might have a format or a template for you to use to ensure a standardized approach, but SMART is quite often used by organizations. So I'd like you to take a minute again, and I'd like you to think about how you could evaluate a learning program that you've taught. And I'd like you to think about what areas for improvement might you identify. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to think about that. I should have mentioned it's probably helpful if you maybe write down 1 or 2 sentences during each activity. And then after the lecture, it's good to go back and reflect upon these answers in light of the new information that you've received. Okay, so then we move on to the next learning outcome, which is to be able to instigate change and improvement in educational organizations. And the criteria that you'll be assessed on for this is to be able to develop a plan for change using information and feedback from appropriate sources, determine the potential impact of change on resources and service delivery, communicate the plan for change to stakeholders to gain their support, and finally, implement a plan for change. So then we move on to how we're going to implement that change, what we're going to do to make that change, to make things better in your institution. So quality improvement is about having systems in place to continuously monitor and improve the products and services an organization offers. And there's two main quality improvement models, and they're known as Lean and Six Sigma. And I'm just going to put you off this PowerPoint so that I can read my notes. So, have you ever heard of Lean or Six Sigma? So the Lean process looks at value from the learner's point of view, and it delivers what they need. And this process usually applies to healthcare, but it can be applied to education. So you can have a little look at a website, and it's quality-1.com/lean. And you can have a little look about more about the Lean quality improvement model. So that's quality-1.com/lean. Okay, Six Sigma, on the other hand, that uses data and statistical methods to improve systems. So the aim is to identify and eliminate any defects which are causing variations in quality and to minimize the impact. So this is done by defining a sequence of steps. Hold on a minute. Defining a sequence of steps around a certain objective. So you can have a look at this website to have a little look more about Six Sigma. So it's www.businessballs.com/performance/management Six Sigma definitions. And have a little read through that to get some more ideas about it. Might be a good idea to research both of them and contrast them. So compare and contrast is a good way of getting your marks in an essay. You could even say what you think is positive and negative about each different type of quality improvement model. So the quality improvement models were Lean and Six Sigma. So then we move on to thinking about management systems. So quality management systems, or QMS for short, are about having a set of policies, procedures, and also processes which are already in place. And this ensures the products and services of an organization meet customer requirements. So a QMS system structures the quality improvement process, basically. Some examples of a QMS system: ISO, you might have heard of that one, that's quite famous, and that stands for the International Organization for Standardization. You might also have heard of TQM, which stands for Total Quality Management. So in your essay, you might want to compare and contrast these two systems as well. So ISO and TQM. Organizations can follow these management systems, but they don't have to. They can create their own quality system if they wish. So I'm just going to share with you now the next learning outcome. So the next learning outcome is to be able to monitor the change process. And the assessment criteria for this is to utilize systems for monitoring implementation of a plan for change, to identify and propose ways of overcoming resistance to plan change. And this is quite important because whenever there's a change implemented in a huge organization, there will always be resistance. So this is really important to consider how you're going to overcome the resistance, especially if you're the one implementing that change. And we've already talked about SMART objectives. So you also need to be able to evaluate the progress of a change implementation plan against the SMART objectives that we've already talked about. So first activity. So I'd like you to have a think about what activities could an educational organisation put in place to contribute to a good quality system? And I want you to take a couple of minutes and take a few notes on that. Okay, so I'm just going to go through a few ideas of some activities that you could put in place to contribute to a good quality system. So the first idea is to have a good quality policy which all the staff are familiar with. So you might have seen some policies going around if you've been working in schools, especially in the UK. So quite often there'll be a behaviour policy so that all the teachers know exactly what they should be doing with bad behaviour and also good behaviour. And other policies include health and safety. But yeah, they can be policies written about all different types of things. So you also need to have proactive managers and leaders. This is so important. If you've got managers that are sitting back and they're not taking action when they should be, they're not seen to be helping, or they're not visible around school, then it can lead to people feeling like there's no one to support them from above. But if you've got policies and procedures in place, they also need to regularly be reviewed and updated. There's no point in having policies that have been around for 40 years and they just don't really make any sense anymore. So you need to make sure that they're updated regularly. So we talked about self-reflection and evaluation for staff earlier. But we also need to have a system of appraisal from the managers for staff. And it needs to be an effective appraisal system. So staff need to feel like they're being noticed when they're doing good work. And equally, they need to be picked up on if they're not doing what they should be doing. So you also need to have some kind of way of gaining feedback from learners about their experiences. So a good way of doing that is to use surveys or questionnaires. And of course, for other things around school, you need to carry out audits, observations, and inspections. Staff training, really important. You need to have staff training in place in order to make sure that your staff are developing and they also feel supported and they're moving forward in their career. So if you get the chance to be in a school already, you'll notice that there's ever more products being used in schools, especially in the UK. So for things like taking the register, for things like parents being able to pay for school trips and dinners for their children online. There's lots of products that we use, and also services. So those products and services, they're on a continuing basis, but they need to be evaluated. Maybe you can save some money by changing to a different product. Maybe it's not a very effective product or service, and you need to evaluate those in order to implement change. So then obviously that leads us on to data. So you need to analyze your data, and you need to be benchmarking and following targets. So you also need to be creating realistic action plans. And then you need to be monitoring the progress of these action plans. And of course, you need to be following all the relevant regulations and external requirements. So, for example, teachers could be proactive with their own continuing professional development, or CPD for short, and action planning using our SMART objectives: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. Managers can create a quality improvement plan in conjunction with all staff. So that could be done at a meeting. Staff can carry out a SWOT analysis. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So that could be part of your self-assessment. SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Staff can also liaise with other agencies and professionals to support their learners. And teachers can also carry out current research relating to their professional practice. So this could be in pedagogy, and it could also be in subject specialism. But I think you'll find out in the real world that this doesn't really tend to happen very often, unless you've got teachers who are studying in their own time outside of school hours, and they specifically ask to carry out research. It doesn't really happen that often. But it is something that you could implement if you were willing to give teachers more time away from teaching in order to do that, because it's so invaluable for the learners as well as the teachers. So I'm just going to direct you back to the PowerPoint now. And where is it? There we go. So it's just a quick article, 5 strategies for managing change in schools, just as a kind of summary to what we've been talking about so far. And I'm going to give you 4 or 5 minutes to have a read through that. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you had the chance to read through that there. It's a good summary. Okay, so we've gone through the process of thinking about what needs to be changed and then implementing the change using quality improvement systems. How are we going to ensure that that quality is there in the system? So we use something called quality assurance. And quality assurance can be defined as a system which guarantees the quality of the products or services offered. So in the case of education, the product is the program, qualification, or set of standards that the learner is working towards. And therefore, the service is everything which underpins the product and supports the learner. So if quality assurance does not take place, there could be risks to the accuracy, consistency, and fairness of training and assessment practice. So the quality assurance process, really, what it's doing is seeking to avoid problems, stabilize and improve the products and services offered to learners. It can be thought of as a proactive system which resolves any issues as they occur. And that is in contrast to quality control. And that quality control is what seeks to find problems and is usually reactive after the event. So quality assurance is the proactive system, and that's resolving issues as they occur. And quality control, that seeks to find problems and is reactive after the event. So a good quality system will have structures in place to enable situations to be dealt with as they happen, rather than afterwards when it might be too late. So that's really important in education because we're not dealing with any old good or service, we're dealing with people's education. So you want a good quality system to be in place so that if anything is going wrong, then you want to be able to deal with it sooner rather than later before it affects learners' education too much. And I'm just going to direct you towards the PowerPoint in a minute. So it's the quality assurance cycle. And it's a visual representation of what we just started to talk about. Here it is. And there's our quality assurance cycle. So it can be used for both internal and external quality assurance activities. So you identify the product or service, and then you start planning. You do the activity, and then you have a decision about it and feedback. And then you evaluate. And then you just keep going like that. And hopefully, eventually, you reach a stage where things are running smoothly. But then, of course, you still need to continue with your evaluation and self-assessment. So the quality assurance cycle, it consists of identifying the product or service. So that means ascertaining what is to be taught, assessed, or internally quality assured, and why. For example, are learners working towards a qualification or a program of learning? Or are staff being observed performing their job roles? So the criteria needs to be clear. Lost my bit now. So the criteria needs to be clear. So, i.e., units from a qualification, or the support the learner receives, which is a service. So learners should be allocated to assessors in a fair way, perhaps according to their location or workload. So that's the first part of the cycle. And then we get to the planning. So we need to devise a sample plan to arrange what will be monitored, from whom and when. So that means planning the dates to observe trainer and assessor performance, holding team meetings and standardization activities. Information will then need to be obtained from the assessors to assist the planning process, and then risks taken into account, such as assessor knowledge, qualifications, and experience. And then we move on to the activity. So carry out the IQA, EQA activities, such as sampling the learner's work, talking to learners, staff, supervisors and witnesses, observing trainer and assessor performance, sampling assessment records and decisions, and preparing for external visits. Activities also include holding meetings and standardization events, supporting and training relevant staff, and in communication with others. So decision and feedback. So there needs to be a judgment made as to whether the trainer or assessor has performed satisfactorily and made valid and reliable decisions. They need to provide developmental you need to provide developmental feedback as to what was good or what could be improved. And action points need to be agreed if necessary and then followed up. And then finally, we come to evaluation. So we need to carry out a review of the assessment and quality process. And this determines what could be improved or done differently. And after that, you can agree action plans if necessary, and they can then be implemented and followed up. So follow any action plans from external quality assurers or inspectors, and then write self-assessment reports as necessary to link in with the organization's quality cycle. So throughout the cycle, standardization of practice between assessors and internal quality assurers should take place. And this will help ensure the consistency and fairness of all decisions. Feedback should also be obtained from learners and others, and records must be maintained of all activities for audit requirements. So as you can see, the cycle just continues. So I mentioned IQA in the previous slide, and that stands for internal quality assurance. So internal quality assurance relates to the monitoring of all the teaching, learning, and assessment activities which learners will undertake. The activities should form part of an organization's overall quality assurance system, and they can be for all courses and programs, not just those which are accredited via an awarding organization. So within a school, for example, in a secondary school, that would be all the courses from year 7, which is first year of secondary, all the way up to the last year of school, which is year 10, year 11. And not just including the GCSEs, which are externally taken by 3 exam boards. So as a minimum, an internal quality assurer should plan what will be monitored, from whom and when. They should observe trainer and assessor performance and provide developmental feedback. They need to sample assessment records, learners' work, and assessment decisions. They need to meet with learners and others, for example, witnesses from the workplace. They also need to facilitate the standardization of practice and also support trainers and assessors. So we've looked at internal quality assurance. So now we need to think about external quality assurance. And external quality assurance seeks to ensure that assessment and internal quality assurance activities have been conducted in a consistent, safe, and fair manner. So the process must take place on behalf of an awarding organisation, an AO, for each accredited centre which offers their qualifications. And this is to ensure the learners who have been registered with them have received a quality service, and that the assessment and IQA decisions are valid and reliable. So an external quality assurance need to maintain their own records as proof of what they've done, and they also need to complete the awarding organisation's report. I'm wondering if any of you have had experience of an external quality assurance visit. So external quality assurance applies to all organizations who deliver and assess qualifications, which are certificated via an awarding organization. Also, an external quality assurer will visit or carry out a remote verification to sample learners' work and assessment records. So I'm just going to direct you towards a short video now. Where are we? Share screen. Okay, so if you watch this short video, and it just gives a good summary about the difference between quality assurance and quality improvement. And once you've watched the video, I would like you to reflect on the quality improvement and quality assurance arrangements and activities where you work. And if you're not working at the moment, you can think about it from the past, or if you don't have anything to relate to it, you can think about quality improvement and quality assurance in terms of what you're going to do in the future. Okay, I'm going to give you, I think the video is 3 minutes, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes for that activity. So the quality cycle will often cover activities which are in addition to, or which complement those which might occur as part of the quality assurance process. So all aspects of the quality cycle are relevant to the way an organization which offers education and training should operate. It's usually based on the concepts of planning, doing, checking, and acting on various aspects. And it usually covers the whole of an organization's operations. So I'm going to let you have a look at this. Give me 2 seconds. So here we've got a visual representation of the quality cycle. And in there, in the middle there, you can see plan, do, check, and act. It's quite similar to what we've been discussing today, really. There's always planning and then doing and then checking and then reflecting on what's been done in order to initiate improvement. Just let you have a little look at that. We're going to use it in the next activity. Okay. So, what aspects of the quality cycle will you be involved with and why? I'll give you 2 minutes to think about that. Sorry about that. Just had a little visit from my daughter. Couldn't get her out the room. So hopefully you had a good think about how you might be involved in the quality cycle. So the aspects at your organizations might differ a little bit to those in the cycle. However, it's still a useful thing to be able to see the overall quality functions of an educational organization. So that leads us almost to the end. So we've got through it quite fast. So I just want you to have a quick look at this summary quiz to help you try to remember everything. So I'm going to put that on now. I'm going to share screen. So summary quiz coming up right now. So 5 questions. See if you can jot down the answers. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to have a think about that. Okay, so we'll just go through those answers quickly. So QMS is about having a set of policies, procedures, and processes in place to ensure the products and services of an organization meet customer requirements. Quality assurance, number 2, can be defined as a system which guarantees the quality of the products or services offered. And then question 3, the quality cycle will often cover activities which are in addition to or which complement those which might occur as part of the quality assurance process. And then number 4, what is self-evaluation? Self-evaluation is a process of thinking about how you have performed and asking yourself questions to identify how you could improve. It also includes obtaining feedback from others to inform your questioning. Okay, and then finally, we have question 5, which is, what is the difference between qualitative and quantitative data? Qualitative data gives you information, for example, from answers to open questions. Quantitative data gives you numbers. For example, 8 out of 10 learners achieved the qualification. So hopefully you managed to answer some of those questions. So don't forget that when you're writing your assessments, you should be referring to academic papers, to books, and also to websites, but remember not to refer to blogs. So I gave you a blog to read earlier. That was just to get you thinking about it, but you shouldn't be referring to blogs when you're writing your assessments, just something to be aware of. So I'm just going to direct you towards the reading list now that I've put together. And it may be that there's newer versions, but these are the ones that I have at home. So always make sure that you're putting the newest version of a book into your reading list. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen with you now. Okay, so here's my reading list. You might want to take a note of any of those. Okay, then I'm going to move on to the second reading list. Okay, and then we move on to some website lists. And the first one there is an education and training self-assessment tool. It's quite useful, that one, so definitely look that one up. I'm just going to mute myself and leave this on, but you can let me know if you're finished with the slide and I can move on. Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Amanda. So I'm going to direct you to the next one. And at the bottom is six stigma, which I actually mentioned during the lecture. So just in case you didn't catch that, you can write that one down now. Excellent. Okay, next one. And these are some journal articles. So these are more detailed and they require a bit more, how do we put it? A bit more thinking when we're reading about them. So these are academic papers. So yeah, these are worthwhile looking up, definitely. You might want to put them into your assessment. I don't know if you have the ability to look these up through your organization. You can try anyway. You might get them for free. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's lecture. Hopefully it's been informative for you. Sorry that it's been quite a dry topic and there's not really much interaction, but hopefully you've taken something away from it. But remember to do your own research and your own reading outside the topic. And this is the list of topics that we've covered today. Okay, so if you've written down everything you need to, the lecture is finished, so you can go. Have a lovely rest of the day, and I wish you the best of luck with your assessment.